realize that, I've seen a couple documentaries on Synanon.
By now, yeah.
Yes, but I'm wondering if you'd go back and kind of talk about, before it became a cult, what was Synanon? What were you there for? What was Art there for? And, kind of that how he wooed you with his stories and his charm, that finally, I think you succumbed to his advances,
Yeah.
and the rest, as they say, is in the book.
Yeah. Well, we have to go all the way back to 1968, and the end of 1968. I doubt whether many people here were around then. And many of them, oh yeah? Congratulations. Yeah, well then you know. Anyway, I was a freelance photographer, and I was doing a lot of drugs like everybody else was. I mean, I was in Los Angeles in the middle of the rock and roll kingdom, in the summer of love, all the rest of it. And I just got a little carried away. And I didn't know, at first I tried to kill myself, and that didn't work out. So then I decided, I had heard about Synanon, which was a residential rehab center. And at that time when I went in, that was in that was in 1969, February. It was not a cult. It was a rehab facility, a live-in rehab facility where people had jobs and had what they call the Synanon game, which was basically group therapy, a little more forceful than group therapy, but it was really good.
And right there on the beach in Santa Monica, like
right
prime
there,
real estate.
Right, yeah. It's a gorgeous, fancy, modern, beautiful hotel right now that I've occasionally gone and spent a lot of money in their restaurant. But they just got this beautiful, gorgeous hotel and a bunch of apartments nearby. And then Art Pepper came in. After I went in, Art Pepper came in, and he was a real hope to die dope fiend. And everybody said, do you want to go see Art Pepper? Because they had, all the addicts were kicking on couches in the gigantic living room. And I said no.
Or just like, do you want to go kind of watch the animals in the zoo as
that's
they,
right.
as they get
Everybody would.
sober?
He said that when he was on the couch there, people would come over and say, "Hi, I'm so and so," and So
remember me?
Right.
The show.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they finally put him in the infirmary because he couldn't take all those people bothering him. But I did not go to view him. But he came to me. We had every Saturday night, we had what was called Saturday Night Party, and he hit on me. And we can, that was pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. So then you take up with him, and again, you touch on it a little bit in the film, but I mean, that was, if not the actual tape deck, that was kind of the same idea, that old school cassette deck that we used to have. Talk more about the process of writing Straight Life. How did you know that this story needed to be written, and how did you go about turning it in to still, people come up to you and me on the street and say, this book, changed my life.
Yeah.
How it changed your life for sure.
Yeah,
How did it come about?
Well, Art left before me. They stopped smoking. He was secretly smoking. Meanwhile, people were getting in touch with him. He'd been there 2.5, maybe 3 years. I've been there 3.5 years. And he left, letting me know that he was leaving, and I would not leave with him. And then he wrote me a letter. And at that time, I knew in those days, if a woman left Synanon following a man, it was considered she was just a weak female who didn't know what she was doing, and she was kind of forgiven if she wanted to come back. A man did not get that kind of treatment. So I thought if ever there was a time to go, it would be now. The other thing I'm a real opportunist, and the other thing that I realized was that Art had been telling me these stories of his life. They had what they called the guest room. That's where we made love weekly, pretty much. And after sex, we would talk, and he would tell me the stories of his life.
Post-coital story time.
That's right. And I was very receptive.
At that moment, I'm sure.
Yeah. But the stories were fantastic. I mean, I knew how great they were.
So he leaves Synanon, you leave Synanon, you're in an apartment, where in LA when
Venice, in Venice.
Oh, beautiful. Just up the road from Santa Monica, there you are.
Right,
You
and
turn
he's
on
working in a friend's bakery.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
he
he
had a
wasn't
stint
playing
as a
music.
baker.
Right.
So, yeah, and that's a perfect, I think, pivot or segue, as we say, that you collect the stories, the book comes out, and the way I talk about it is you revived his career. The book revived his career, and you step into a new role as really manager of all things Art Pepper Music, and it took you around the world and got him in the studios and all the rest. I mean, what a crash course to even, take that up. It's one thing to be the author. You were already working in the media, so to speak, and newspapers and such. But here you are now, the author of a book and the manager and
Of a band.
Of a band. What is there a highlight, a memory, a low light? I mean, I hear the recordings. I'm fascinated because we got to travel to Japan this summer, and of
Right.
course we went into the music stores, and there's a lot of stuff licensed over there. What was it like to take this band to places as far-flung as Japan?
It was heaven. I mean, it was hard work. Art was not an easy person. He was not an easy person. The band members were mostly really reliable good guys and great musicians.
I'm trying to remember who were on like the early
Well,
Japan tour.
the first trips were Bob Magnuson on bass, and he's still teaching in San Diego. Milcho Leviev on piano, who was Bulgarian, and one of the greatest piano players I ever heard, and he's gone now. And the drummer was Carl Burnett, who accompanied Art to the very end because he was just the best drummer. He was a wonderful drummer. He played with everybody, and he just really was a great listener. Art just loved him. So,
Well, fortunately,
Bob Magnuson and Carl.
and fortunately, many of those shows are preserved, and I want to get in a second talk about Widow's Taste, the label, and Omnivore, the other one that you're working with. But I was just thinking, I previewed, there's a 34-minute version of the piece that we saw 12 minutes of, that Laurie's been working on since literally major Hollywood directors came knocking, and you said, if you won't make it right, I'm not going to
Right.
sell out and let you make it. So if you visit the merch table, you need to put the right thing in YouTube if you want to see the full 34 minutes. But when I previewed it in Art's own voice, there's a story in there about how a lot of times this is the record that's most mentioned.
And it's been pointed out that story is a little exaggerated.
Okay, so what's in here, I don't know if you want to tell it or
Same
read
story.
it from here.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I have reasons to say that it's a little exaggerated, but
Okay.
it's not a lot
For
exaggerated.
folks who aren't familiar, can you do the Reader's Digest version?
I'll try. Art was living with this woman, Diane, and he had been in prison a couple of times already, and he was using drugs, and he was using drugs very self-destructively, and he claimed in the story that he hadn't played in 6 months. In fact, he had played about 2 weeks earlier in a record date. But the fact that he did not remember it that well is not surprising.
And I should say, we're talking about 1957, Art Pepper and the rhythm section.
So Diane made an arrangement with the producer of that record that they would not tell him about the record date. They would just spring it on him on the day. And that was with Miles Davis's rhythm section, because the producer was not happy with the bands that Art had been recording with. He didn't think they were up to his stature, which was to a large extent really true. So Miles Davis's rhythm section
And
won.
let me just stop for folks. We've got a room full of jazz fans, but it's Red Garland, Paul Chambers, and Philly Joe Jones.
Exactly.
He walks into the studio with them.
What?
He
He walked in. So Art had to, he was a little upset, and he managed to get his clothes on. His horn was in bad shape. Now everybody said he didn't put his horn away properly. The mouthpiece really did come off the neck, and he had to fix it with Scotch tape. I mean, all of that part is definitely true. And then he stumbles into takes a big shot of heroin, I suppose, and he stumbles into the recording session and pretends like everything's cool, and he makes this record.
And it's a record that lives on in people's delight to this day,
Yeah,
and the story behind
it's a great recording.
Yes, and
Because he was a genius, as he points out in the other part of this movie.
Yes, he could have gone to Caltech and been a great engineer or a movie star. And these players also sang his praises after the session. I mean, he was a hit. So we've talked about Straight Life, and I'll circle back in a minute to a couple of books that you've written more recently that I think are available here. But this is sort of a companion piece, thank you. This is sort of a companion piece to the Straight Life. It's called Art, Why I Stuck with a Junkie Jazz Man. And I guess I want to pose it to you. I mean, I think it's funny where the title came from, but if I can be, as sort of low-hanging fruit as this, why did you stick with the Junkie Jazz Man?
Yeah, right. Because, number one, he was a genius. Number two, he was the first person in my life who really appreciated me. He thought I could do much more than I ever imagined that I could, and it turned out he was right. So he needed me to be better than I had been, more adult than I had ever been, more responsible, and I was.
As you say, you stepped up.
Yeah.
But and so that role took you all kinds of places, all over the world, and learning how to do everything you needed to do besides play jazz.
Well, I had been a jazz fan when I was 17. I mean, I really had a lot of records. I hung out with a lot of jazz musicians. So it wasn't like this was like, and I lived in LA, and Art was performing in LA, and I never saw him there. Never happened.
Not till Synanon, but then you saw him quite a bit, and as a result, you're the keeper of Art Pepper's legacy.
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable, I don't know that I've ever asked you about this. I mean, there's more to this question, but like talking about Art's last days and years, I mean, he was gigging right up until he died. Are you willing to say a little bit about Art's death? And then what I'm really interested in is you as a music publisher, a label owner, you have Widow's Taste, you're partnering with Omnivore, and kind of how did you learn to become basically Art Pepper Music Corporation?
On the job training.
If people haven't read the end of the book, I mean, what was it that finally, I just always say he died of his excess.
Yeah, he did. His health was terrible, and he was touring, and he was on methadone maintenance, and he was doing a lot of coke, and he was drinking a lot. And every now and then I would try to get him to, but anybody who's been in that situation, you can't do it. It cannot be done. So I joined Al-Anon instead, and I dealt with the business and hoped for the best. And the thing about Art Pepper that is different from an awful lot of people who do the kinds of things he did was that he was absolutely, totally responsible. That's why the producer was able to do that, spring that date on him, because he knew he would show up and he knew he would play.
He rose to the occasion.
Every occasion.
He showed up for the gig,
Yeah.
and he played his ass off.
Yeah.
And that's why we have those recordings.
Yeah.
Say more. I mean, how did you become a music publisher and a label owner? I mean, how did you know to do that? And you know, what is the empire such that it is today?
I learned by being in the business, you know. I was with a record company, and the producer said, the owner of the record company said, you should really affiliate him with BMI, which pays money for broadcast. And so I did that. And then
So you get paid.
right. And then when he died, I went to UCLA and took a lot of courses in music business law, contract law, and and I started writing contracts. And I recognized early, somebody told me early, you got to have the publishing. If he's writing these songs, you don't want to give them away. So I started a publishing company.
That's how you became. You know, you call him the genius, but I've been trying, Maggie and I both have been trying to like figure out, you know, the different mechanical royalties and publishing, and it's, you know, it's so confusing. And you're the person who knows it and knows how to make it work and has made it work. So here's a label called Widow's Taste, and I love because you're sourcing the music, the content on these recordings from all over, and people will find a lot of the recordings over at Merch. But how does Widow's Taste work?
Well, I was, right after Art died, I desperately needed money, and I had some live tapes, and the Japanese were willing to pay me to license them. That's how that started. And then I started getting Fantasy Records, who had been Art's label at the end, to license some of them. And some other people were licensing them. But as the music business changed, I realized that I should do it myself because it was the only way. And nobody was going to pay to license them anymore. I mean, the music business really went through a tremendous change after Art died in 1982. And you know, and then downloads and all that stuff.
CDs, then downloads,
Right.
and streaming.
Right.
Yeah.
So then what I was able to do was grab pirated recordings, copy them, and release them under the Widow's Taste, right? And say, look, put them on Bandcamp, and say, the thieves are collecting money, maybe you should give some of that money to me. And they did.
Hence the Widow's Taste.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then a rabid fan in Belgium, sent me this list of all the live recordings in existence that he knew of Art Pepper, and he had many of them. And we started talking, and we started conferring about what I should release, and that's what happened.
His expertise. Yeah, we should name check it. Rocco Bertels.
Yes, Rocco Bertels, who lives in Mechelen in Belgium.
And he's essentially the archivist for
He is the archivist,
all of this.
yes.
And what a
He's a dedicated guy.
So appreciated. Well, I'm going to invite questions in just a moment. So, you know, we're going to have the opportunity. I think you'll just call them out rather than a mic. But I wanted to give you a chance to. I was thinking about, you were describing some of the Widow's Taste recordings. One of my favorites. It's hard to choose, but one was recorded in Atlanta, and I think you're the recording engineer on that one.
Yes.
Is that how?
Yes.
How did that happen?
That happened because Art wanted he knew he was going to die soon. He kept telling me almost every day that was going to happen, and he wanted to be recorded. So I got at that time, a TCD9, which was a Sony tape deck. And
Reel to reel? Reel to reel?
No.
Cassette?
Cassette.
Okay.
Right? And a microphone that was pretty good. And one mic. And I would set it up with tape, you know, on the bandstand, and, you know. And so I did record quite a number of his recordings, and Atlanta was recorded that way. And thank God for the technology and the mastering abilities of people now, that a lot of the mistakes I made are, you know, have been fixed.
Well, it's as I say, it's one of my favorites. It's a marvelous sounding recording.
I love that record too.
At the risk of being shamelessly self-promotional, we're allowed. In addition to Straight Life and Art, Why I Stuck with a Junkie Jazz Man.
That's from a headline in an Australian women's section of an Australian magazine where they interviewed me, and that was the headline they put on the interview. I loved it.
You co-opted it for your title.
Right.
I see 2 other books here that are available. If you want to mention the 2 others, and folks are invited to stop by merch and talk more about
A memoir of my childhood with my mother, me and my mother and others, and a book that I did right after Art died, and then they fired my editor, and I finally brought it out last year.
called Every Woman Alone, Women on Their Own in America.
And it's oral histories of women in America.
Yeah, oral history is kind of the theme that ties a lot of this together. Memoir,
Yeah.
personal narrative, and we're so lucky to have it, and all these books are available. Before we change out the stage and bring on Daryl Gott to listen to Art Pepper music to celebrate, it would have been his 100th birthday on September 1?
September 1st.
Yeah.
All the greatest saxophone players, seriously, Sonny Rollins, I think Charlie Parker,
All September?
Virgos.
Yes, the Virgos. Questions for Laurie? I'm looking for anybody who's wishing I had asked a question.
Over here,
Okay, I see one over here and then back over here. Arturo?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I was just curious in that a great recording of Art Pepper in Tokyo, 1979. Were you there with him?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
It featured Cal Jader and a very
That was our first
Poncho
trip to
Sanchez.
Japan. Poncho Sanchez. Wasn't he wonderful? We
Yeah.
were so lucky.
That's a great one.
That
We-
was our first trip to Japan.
I think it was released in this country as Tokyo Debut or something. and-
Yes, Tokyo debut.
But we picked it up in Japan. The Japanese version is called First Time in Japan.
Great. Yeah.
And I just want to say that there's one recording that Art is on that was before you met him. that-
A lot of them.
Right.
Right.
That is called The Playboys with
Chet
Chet
Baker.
and Denver's very own Phil Urso, the middle jazz.
I didn't know he was from Denver.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Tokyo Debut, because you were touring with Cal Jader.
Right.
There's some wonderful Cal Jader on at least the recording that I got in
Yeah.
Japan. And Gift of Jazz just celebrated his centenary recently with a wonderful Vibes show.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've licensed it to people, and I think it's available on my Bandcamp site. So,
Laurie-
yeah,
Laurie Pepper
go to
on Bandcamp.
Bandcamp. It's, the download's very cheap. Yeah.
Another question here.
Go ahead.
Somebody over here and then
I
we'll,
saw a hand over there.
up there, please.
Over is like practice and composition practices at home. Like,
How did he practice and compose music? What were his habits?
If there was an important recording session or a really important tour coming up, he would just sit down and write music. And he would just sit down and write it. That's it. He did it. And some of his earlier stuff was based on changes to standards. But later on, he was writing all his own stuff. And then practicing, he almost never practiced saxophone. But he practiced on his clarinet because it was small and easy, you know. So he would just sit on the bed and watch sports on television and play the clarinet, wander around the house, play the clarinet.
I could picture it. I think Maggie has a story of watching Art in action. Yes, please.
Well, like, at what point in Art's life did he learn to play music?
He was 9 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. He saw, well, he had
Did
some,
he have lessons?
oh yeah, he had lessons from a really, low budget kids teacher, basically, who told him he was a genius, which he learned early on. And then he started going down to Central Avenue, which was the black jazz district in those days, before the Second World War. And he was jamming with all the big jazz guys, and he was in a black jazz band when he was, even though he was white, when he was, I think he was 16. He joined Stan Kenton's band when he was 17. And then he got drafted when he was 18.
And the stories in here name check again. It's the who's who of jazz of that
Absolutely.
era, and including their first person recollections and
Yeah.
appreciations.
As usual, I love interviewing people, and
Yes.
yeah.
I love. Anyway, please.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I don't really have a question, I just have a comment. You must have had a fabulous life.
I think I have.
And still do.
Still do, because I survived it. Yes, there was that.
Yes,
I've
just.
been lucky. I've had a very lucky life. Yeah.
From your perspective, as a guy who does not have the knowledge of jazz in this room, kind of like in the 90s where there was an East Coast, West Coast rap and hip-hop rivalry.
Right.
With art being in the West Coast.
Yeah, but
honestly,
you're talking about rap, and actually back in the 50s, there was an East Coast, West Coast rivalry
And
also.
that's what I want to learn about, because for somebody who just sees jazz as a complete subject,
Yeah.
can you sort of talk about what East Coast, West Coast meant?
There was a difference, a general difference, that West Coast jazz was more how do you pronounce that? Polyphonal, polyphony? Yeah, it was like Dixieland, you know, people all played at once and it was pretty cool. I personally really liked it. And East Coast jazz was more hardcore, it was less playful. And, but those were the main differences. And Art, even though he played a lot of that polyphony early on when he left Kenton, he was never really an East Coast player because he was more hardcore, just like Charles Mingus was from the West Coast. And if you listen to his music, he was not an East Coast player, he was a West Coast player. So, you know, you can't really categorize those guys that easily.
Yeah, Art seemed, you know, as I've listened to you, read, and listened to his music, there was an evolution, as one would expect. He, you know, so many of us, you know, sort of gravitated to Coltrane, and why not? What was Art's relationship? I mean, I think he listened to a lot of Coltrane.
Yeah, he did. He said that after the war, everybody was imitating Charlie Parker, and he made a conscious decision not to do that, but he did want to play bebop. He loved it, but he did it his own way. But he said when he heard Coltrane, he nearly got roller coastered over or something, because he did do a lot of stuff that had Coltrane-esque qualities before he incorporated it all in his own music.
Thankfully, too. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Charlie Parker and alto, and I know for folks who couldn't see as close as I was sitting, the downbeat poll that you were
Charlie
pointing
Parker
to,
was number one.
He wins number one, but who comes in second in downbeat that year
Yeah.
on alto but Art Pepper? So
Yeah.
we're going to wrap it up in just a second and make sure
There's
that
a hand over here.
let's have it.
Over here.
Please.
Could you just repeat, what is the name of the Atlanta recording that you were talking about, and where can you find that?
It's back at the table back there. It's called Unreleased Art Pepper Volume 10.
Okay.
And it's red, and it's Atlanta. It's a beautiful recording. But you can also go to the Bandcamp site, and you can download any of those digital recordings, high quality, instead of, you know, buying a CD. I shouldn't be saying that, but you can.
It's
And
called Unreleased Art Pepper
Volume
Volume 10.
10, yeah.
Yeah,
Volume 10.
look for the mention of Atlanta.
Yeah,
There's a
Atlanta.
whole series of these unreleased
Oh,
art
wait a
figures.
minute, sorry, it's volume 11.
Yeah.
10 is Toronto. Okay, 10 is real nice too. And Atlanta is green, so, yeah. And for anybody who wants the entire history of Art Pepper in music, there's an album that's only available for download. It's 4 discs worth of Art Pepper from the very beginning. And it's called Unreleased Art Pepper Volume 4, The Art History Project. And you can find that on the Bandcamp site.